join us, our most popular guest.
That's right. We don't have a guest as we're live.
Yes, but we have Squirrelash.
We have
That's a guest.
Squirrel Ash guest. Well, who's Squirrel Ash? No one knows. You have to tell everyone.
Squirrelash is Eldamon number 1, the very first Eldamon in the whole Eldamon index. So, wow, my stream looks really blurry. I don't know if that's only me or if that's everybody else too.
All right, well, I'm going to take a look right now. Let's take a look.
It may be only Eldamon me, number 1. But, it looks blurry to me. Let's see what people say in chat. Oh, good. I don't care if it's blurry to me because it doesn't matter to me as long as everybody else doesn't have it blurry.
You need more internet. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's likely the issue here.
Yes.
When I was in that tiny apartment, everything was next to the router, but here, like,
do you want to show off? So I put away the fake ones. Those were the prototypes, and we got in the mail. These are actually
the real ones.
The real ones.
I only have Squirrelash here just because I can't really show all of them easily, but also because I finished writing up this little stats for Squirrelash, so we're very close to the Eldamon Trainer playtest. The class is done. The progression and chassis is done. All of the Elda decks, like lore information for the Eldamon that are going to be in the playtest, which is 48 of the 162, is done. But now I need to do the stats, and I've got Squirrelashes. So depending on how long this goes, I may get some more done today. I'll see how many can get done tomorrow. Friday is the Reddit AMA, so you should check it out in r/Pathfinder2e. So however much I can get done through that. If I finish on Thursday or if I finish on Friday during that AMA, then that is when we will start laying it out and getting it to you.
Yep, they are real. They have like actual tags with all like the legal stuff on it and a barcode, and then they even have these tags. How I can't even believe the quality. I know it's so stupid. You never think of these stupid little tags, but the quality of these tags is ridiculous.
It's very interesting. People who saw it kept saying they thought it was not going to be this high quality.
Even I'm kind of stunned. It's not even high quality. It's like ridiculously high quality. It's like beyond the top quality. I'm like, even I can't even believe it, and I ordered them. But yeah, no, the tags came out great. And then inside, you can see there's a little information. That's actually everything from the Eldadex card. And then on the back is some of the just legal info.
So I'll answer Mr. Wire's question about Eldamon first, and then there's some really good chats from Itsy Bitsy Spire Productions and Ponies and Sunshine about the actual topic. So Mr. Wire, what we're going with Eldamon, we're going to get the playtest out probably end of this week, beginning of next week. Next week then.
Not beginning of this week. You said end of this week, beginning of next week.
I thought I said end of this week, beginning of next week.
You said end of this week. It's not getting end of this week because I got to lay it out.
Fair enough.
Tomorrow's Thursday. It ain't happening. I'm not doing it in one day.
Steven, I would have thought it would take multiple days, but you somehow laid out the elemental avatar, which was even harder to lay out in like 2 hours.
No.
Yeah, but it's so long.
No, this is way, way harder to lay out because I got to lay out 48 Eldamon.
Fair enough. So once that's out with 4 of the 13 elements, then it's going to take at least about a week to write and then play test each of the 9 other elements. They have a whole bunch of different play styles, and we need our play testers to not get overloaded with 13 elements. So at that point, when we have all of those out, so let's think about that. We get the playtest out next week. And then if it takes about a week for each element after that, it may take more for some of them if they get tricky. Then we're looking at sometime, and there's some other products we're working on, right? Like your monsters, but we're looking at sometime near the end of July when all the elements will be out. The entire playtest will be playtestable. And then there's other sections of the book, like some of the world lore for Eldamon. That won't take too long. So I would imagine that we could at least have everything out over to layout, and some of the chapters could go over one at a time for Steven to start laying it out sometime in August, hopefully. So that is a guess. So I would say, I don't know. We have to see. Obviously, if one of the playtested elements has a lot of problems and we have to iterate or redo it, it's going to take longer. But it is still, I think it's still very reasonable to expect it to show up this year, probably. Like,
what? It has to show up this year.
Yeah,
crazy.
That's why I say it's very it's very reasonable to expect
I
it.
hate to break it to you. It doesn't show up this year. You're in a lot of trouble. we're all
there you go. Well, that's why it sounds to me like it would show up in September based on that. But we're always adding new things and where other things.
I haven't added anything new to this. I haven't touched this. Not a single thing.
But you added like 2 other books, some of which have like contemporaneous work times during this. So depending on what happens, we'll see. But we're making good track, and the playtests so far have been very positive. So that makes me think it could go faster. But we need to give enough time to get it right if there's something that needs to be changed during the playtest. So we're very committed to making sure all 13 of the elements work. All right, so let's, I think let's move on to some of the really interesting chats that have already come out about our main topic, which is 5e being easy for players, not just in terms of easy to win and very hard to actually lose, but also easy for players to get into the game, to make their character, and to get started playing, and why this makes it actually hard for GMs or DMs, I guess, since it's 5e. Some of the same design decisions that were very, I think, smart design decisions to help onboard players also wound up making it so it was more difficult for DMs. And there are some people in chat like Itsy Bitsy Spider Productions who say they have 0 problems running encounters in 5e. But I also know that those who have built up that level of skill for encounters are definitely there. But there's a lot of people who do have trouble running certain things in 5e as well. So what's your take on this, Stephen, before I get too much into some of the design weeds?
Well, first of all, someone asked if there's a Panglong-esque Eldamon in the book, and I believe there is. And not only is there one of those,
yeah, I think so. Isn't there like an Earth Pangolin? Is one of the Eldamon?
Well, not only is there an Earth Pangolin, but there's a NPC who has one on his shoulder as his Eldamon. So in artwork, there you go, coming out. So that's
you didn't even tell anybody about that book.
It's not from that. No one knows what I just said. NPC. You say I didn't say it was from a book.
Well, we don't have anything else that has NPCs in it other than books, Steven. That's the only thing we published.
You're assuming too much.
There you go.
It could be anything.
We do. We have a rock pangolin. It's number 124, and it's literally a pangolin. So yes, we do.
Mark is bad at keeping secrets.
I mean, not really.
Except for that's like the 3rd time this podcast you said something you shouldn't have. Anyhow, my idea is that, well, okay. Bear with me a second. First of all, if you have any questions, feel free to chat. If you super chat, we'll answer them right away. If you're a member, we'll answer your members. Obviously, do like and subscribe. We actually have a lot going on, and before I get into all of that, let's put out some links, because there's actually a couple things. First of all, and now this is not a spoiler, but the Year of Monsters has gone and done so well that we're probably going to do more, because a lot of people like it, and it's done really well, and it's fairly, I wouldn't say it's easy for us to do, but it's been very straightforward for us to do. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of texts.
You're right. It's tricky and it's difficult, but we also have gotten the process down and we understand how it works. Mm-hmm. And at this point, it doesn't have to be 100% done by me unless the ancestry is really weird. We can bring in top tier ancestry authors from the greater PF2 and Paizoverse.
Yeah, so we're expanding it and want to keep it going. People seem to be enjoying it quite a bit. The June Ancestry has been
announced. Yeah, it's been announced. It's a Midsummer Night's Dream this June. It's She.
The She.
Yes.
Would you want to explain the She? Because I don't know them that well.
I sure can. And then we can get back to the...
yeah. Well, I want to get back to the links, and then we'll get back to the topics.
Yes. That makes sense. But She are basically an ancient ancestry of Fae who like to sort of build their own realms where they worship a form of fate that is kind of like storybook logic and narrative. And so therefore, they have a weird perspective on things that is skewed compared to a mortal perspective of how things might work. And there's a variety of types of She, including like the Kushi that are like dog She, and the Case She that are their cats, and a bunch of others too, the Ice She and the Dunya She. There's a lot of She. And basically it's fairies for Midsummer Night's Dream. Should be a fun time for everybody.
Okay, so I'm sending out the form exactly. One character too long. There we go.
Next link.
So that's the link. That's the first thing that's coming up. The next thing is the Eldamon playtest trainer will be going up probably in a few days or later next week. The forms will be going up that will ask for people to participate in the playtest. So if you're interested in that, the plushies are in. The thing with the plushies is that right now, only if you did the Kickstarter and you ordered them, you can get them. I didn't order that many extras because they're very expensive, and I didn't know if people wanted them or not. So I can do another order. So what I might do, maybe I'll do a pre-order because they don't take that long. I think they can get them to me pretty quick. Maybe I'll do a pre-order and see if people are interested. Because I did exactly how many not exactly, but I did as many as we had. So I didn't make a ton of extras.
That's what I thought, because people actually asked that, I think last night in Arcane Mark when I showed it. I was like, I think Steven may have only made the right amount. I don't think he made extras. So they were like, where can I get this?
Well, they're expensive. And to be honest, I'm like, I did that with the minis too. And minis, believe it or not, if you think which is more expensive, you think like this mini or this.
I think that the mini would be more expensive.
Mini is surprisingly more expensive than the
probably because of the 3D modeling for the
3D
mini.
modeling. No, that's not that much. It's a couple hundred, but each mini costs a couple bucks. And the modeling for this is a lot easier. So believe it or not, these beautiful, wonderful, cool plushies are cheaper than minis, and minis did not do that great. They do really well on Kickstarters, but no one orders them after. So I didn't want to get stuck with hundreds of plushies. So I basically want to see. I'm not exactly sure the best way to do this, and how well they sell after. So I don't know. Maybe I'll put up a pre-order and see what people say or something.
Makes sense. What's the next link, or is that the links?
No, that was the big one because I'm curious to see what people thought of the plushies. Wait, I had one more thing. So the biggest one of all that everyone's very, very excited about is the Indigo Isles Foundry VTT module is almost ready. So
I hope it will get ready soon. People are really, really looking forward to that.
It's pretty much ready. We got all the front matter and back matter in, and now I'm going through it. And I was actually working on this beforehand. And what we're going to do is we're going to release the first adventure. And it's pretty much more or less ready to go. I don't know if we're going to release it this week, but hopefully by next week, and that's it. And then you guys can, because everyone's, oh my God, everyone stop bugging me. I get it. I know you want it. I know. You don't have to tell me. Oh, they added new things to this. I didn't even realize this. I'm looking at the chill out, and they added little ice I saw that. That's new.
It matches what we wanted.
Oh, there's even on the head too. They added a new one. Oh, that was not in the original. I didn't even notice that.
I saw it. I was like, this is more accurate than the one Steven had before. I assumed you told them to do that.
No, they just did it on their own.
Oh,
they're like crazy. This company. It's kind of amazing. And they even put little fangs, like little fangs in his Mouth, damn, these are good quality. I can't believe
Shadow
the
Draken
quality.
wants to know if we have a link to a licensing model if they wanted to like make crochet or embroidery of an Eldamon.
No, that's a good idea. I should probably do like a not Creative Commons. We don't do Creative Commons.
Yeah, a something like
a community portal thing. That's a good idea.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, I'm going to look into that. I'll ask my lawyer.
We'll do that for you, Shadow Draken, after Steven gets back from his lawyer. So if that's all the links.
That's all the links. There's just a lot going on.
Yeah,
but
no,
I will show.
So
I do have one
on.
extra thing though. That's a teaser. Do you want to see what the teaser is, Mark?
I want to see it. I haven't actually seen the teaser.
You see what this is?
Let me see. Oh, it's the physical map.
Physical map of the Indigo Isles. I wonder what that means. It's not cool. I got to redo it. It's a little hard to read. I'm going to redo it, but look at that. Physical map of the Indigo Isles.
That is sweet.
There's a lot going on over here.
Very excited. We have so much going on, but I am really excited also about talking about the design decisions to go into.
All right, now let's go to this. Well, it's 15 minutes are up. I always let 15 minutes go.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It gets people coming in, and this time there were just a lot of people in the comments who also were talking about.
Oh, I know. So, okay. So this is my thesis. Give me a few minutes. My thesis is that everything that happens, this actually happens in movies. Movies has this thing where if one movie or something is happening in the zeitgeist, if you wait about 1 to 2 to 3 years, then you'll see those type of movies come out because that's how long the production cycle takes. I don't know if that's happening as much now because things are weird with streaming, but it used to be true, and it's still sort of true to a point. Like with fantasy, good example was, when Lord of the Rings came out, and then Harry Potter came out, although actually Harry Potter came out first, then Lord of the Rings. Actually, I guarantee Harry Potter helped Lord of the Rings, which both made so much money, which then helped Game of Thrones, which then helped everything after that. Like, and now fantasy is everywhere. Because when we were growing up, fantasy was nowhere. Point is that I have a similar theory, is that video games sort of lead a little bit of what happens in TTRPGs. And video games used to be, mostly because of the technology and because they were based on arcades, really hard. Now, when I mean hard, just bear with me, they were insane. Okay,
they were impossible.
Go play Donkey Kong. Okay, good luck. Okay, it's one of the hardest. But Donkey Kong, the arcade game, one of the absolute hardest video games ever made in history.
It's pretty hard, but some of those other arcade games are even harder. Those arcade games are really hard.
Because they were designed to take your quarters, and they were designed that you only play for 2 or 3 minutes. So they're purposely hard, but. The thing is that then leached into video games. I mean, I remember the original NES, like Super Mario Brothers, you actually had lives. There was actually scores. All that came from the video game. And then eventually what ended up happening is that they grew up and they realized, you know what? We can just make narrative games where people don't have to die, or if they do, they come right back to life. And then they made these video games that instead of being these short montages, that they actually became 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200-hour affairs. Okay? And I'm just using a broad stroke here. Don't say, sure. Oh, well, what about, Legend of Zelda? Or not Legend of Zelda, but you know what I mean? Like, there's JRPGs and all that. I'm talking about sort of the broad stroke here of video game dumb. So, the point is that then video games, which I think got ridiculously easy, which isn't a bad thing. And now you could actually change the difficulty of video games.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that they're overall like ridiculously too easy, but they definitely are way easier than the arcade games.
But now there's been this resurgence of people playing Dark Souls and roguelikes, which are insanely hard and have true challenge.
Okay, is Dark Souls really that hard?
Dark
because
Souls.
I've only played Dark
It
Souls
is.
1 and I didn't play all of it.
Well,
But
Dark Souls 1, I'm going to be sacrilegious here. I don't like Dark Souls 1. That's what's called a monster in a box or monster in a closet, is where what happens is it's a design choice for video games where you walk, like, so there's a hallway and you walk through the hallway and then it knows you walk past it and then there's a hidden area where the monster comes out and then it's like boo and surprises you. That's called monster in a box design. I hate monster in the box design is the worst, cheapest design in video games. I hate it. Doom
Fair
did
enough.
it. Doom did. That's where it comes from. I don't like it. Now, Dark Souls 2, that's a masterpiece, and that does not do that. Or if it does it, does it very
I didn't feel like
rarely.
Dark Souls 1. Like, so
I didn't like
all
Dark
I
Souls
know
1
is
at
that
all.
everyone said Dark Souls is like the hardest, and I hadn't played it, but I got some of the older ones on a really deep discounted sale. So I
Yeah.
started playing Dark Souls 1 like many years after everybody else had already played it.
Yeah.
And I came
still
out of
love
the
that.
tutorial area, okay? And
Yeah.
everyone said, this is so hard. This is so hard. So what happened was I went into this graveyard with skeletons. And like they were actually like pretty hard, I think. And I went down into these catacombs with skeletons, and it was pretty hard. Like it was legitimately. I was like, okay, this is as hard as I thought people were saying it was going to be.
It gets insanely hard.
But then, well, Steven,
okay.
do you remember Dark Souls 1?
Yeah,
Did you
I
hear
do.
what I said that I
Yeah,
did?
yeah.
Because when I told anyone else, they were like, Mark,
I know where you went.
Mark,
You went to the wrong
lad.
area.
That was not even where you were supposed to go.
Right, I actually know exactly.
That's
You
20
went down. I
times
know where you
harder
went.
than anything
Yes.
that you could possibly have done.
Yes.
Very few people who played this first time could possibly have even beat that area that you went into. It's one of the last areas in the game.
Yes.
And you beat it with starting weapons.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh,
Well,
okay. And I went back to the place I was supposed to go. It was really easy. Like, I think that Dark Souls was only hard because I went to the place I wasn't supposed to go. It's not that hard. It's just that you have to be used to dying and coming back to the campfire. And I guess some people may not be used to that gameplay
Well,
style.
by the way, Demon Souls was monster. That one I really didn't like. Dark Souls 1 is okay. I forget. Demon Souls came first, then Dark Souls. Dark Souls 2 is really good.
Yeah,
That's
Demon Souls did come first for sure.
Dark Souls 3 is fine. But Elden Ring is a perfect example. Like Elden Ring, and by the way, that's true open world design. So if you hear our open world, now we're coming into a video game. Trust me, this is going to get back. This will come back to my point. Is that, with video games, Dark Souls and actually the current Legend of Zelda actually are open world games. Most open world games are what I call golf course games. Is they're open world, but you actually still have to do them kind of linear. So they're more of a golf course because it looks like an open world, but it's not really an open world. You got to kind of do it in the order. Dark Souls and Legend of Zelda, you go right to the end. They don't care. Like, you can go right to the end. You can go after Gandalf if you want. They don't care. Or Ganon at the end. They don't care. You can just do it, Gandalf. Yeah, right. No, Ganon. Calamity Ganon. It's hard, but you can do it. And same thing with Elden Ring. Although I think Elden Ring does have some gate systems. There's some gating in that. Anyhow, my point is that right now people are really into these hard games, which is interesting because I think people really want challenge. Now, the reason I bring this all up is because, and you've noticed this because I keep talking about it with you, Mark, is these OSR games like Dungeon Crawl Classics, Shadow Dark, and now Knave are making $1 million on Kickstarter. Like, they're doing insane. And these are really, really hard RPGs.
They're super hard.
They're super hard. They're designed for you to die. And the funny thing
they have
is
funnels where your characters die and the ones that survive make it out of the funnels.
But the funny thing is, that's all first edition D&D. It all came full circle. I'm like,
well, sure. That's why OSR is the old school Renaissance, right? It's bringing back. It's trying to bring things back full circle. That's like its whole deal.
Yeah, I know. The whole point is that and these things are doing so well, and it's because I think that people are playing 5e and they are just not challenged. And I haven't
People
played it.
don't want a challenge though.
What's that? No, you're completely right.
Like, as someone who does want a challenge, and so therefore was involved in creating Pathfinder 2, which some people have said is too hard for their group or their players didn't want the challenge of it.
It's pretty damn hard.
It's still much easier than the old school Renaissance stuff.
No,
or
it's much easier, but it is very, if you are not playing the game as intended by the designer, which in my opinion is you have to work as a group and you can't all go off on your own and do your own thing, you will die.
I would say is that OSR is the arcade games, and that PF2 is more like a modern game that is a little bit higher difficulty level on its standard difficulty, where like the easier games would just call that mode hard mode, but some games are like, no, the one intended by the designers has a little challenge to it, but that you kind of feel like it's fair because you made the decisions.
I think
that you made.
So OSR games are like arcade games. They're just, you will die. It's not a question if, it's just
that's part of the fun of them. If you like that.
Yeah, you will die. I think Pathfinder is Elden Ring, if I was going to guess. If I'm going to say Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if you played without the free archetype, if you play it according to the core rules, which is what we do, and you don't cheese it, I think it's Elden Ring. It's not impossible, but if you're not paying attention, you die. and it's going to be unforgiving on how you die. And I would say 5e is your standard TT RPG on easy mode. That's how I think of it, or like World of Warcraft. It's very handholdy. It's a very narrative-led experience. It's very easy, and it's designed that way. By the way, we had Jay Heron for $5 said Michael Sayre, I know Mike, recently wrote about class evaluation using simulations. Could Mark comment on what these simulations compromise computer models? You might have to look up that article by Mike's there. I'm not sure.
Like, it just depends on what kind of simulations you want to run. Sometimes simulations involve, for me, they often involve like running a mock combat where I'm playing everything, both the PCs and the monsters, to see what actually happens during that. That's definitely a stronger playtest tool than just using a white room calculation. Obviously, it provides anecdotes that are not fully data points, but it gives you an experiential feel for like what's actually going to happen, that you might not have been able to realize if you were just kind of guessing and doing some math. So that's what I would do for a simulation. I know that Mike also has simulations that are simpler that he sometimes does in his head, where he thinks about the action usage, like takes his 3 fingers for the 3 actions, and I'll see him like describing and putting one up as he talks about some of the turns. So it's a mix of things, I think.
So I would
to get back to your point, what?
No, I was going to say, it's like I'm reading some of the chat. It's like, the thing with first edition with 5th edition is, and they were very public about this, is they designed the game based on public feedback. And I guarantee a lot of that public feedback was they wanted an easier game and they didn't want to die. And the thing is, and this is, I don't know if you're aware of this as much, Mark, but like the way Pathfinder, the way 5e works is levels 1 through 5, you zip through. Like you can get.
Yes, I am aware of this.
Okay, well, I don't know how much you've actually played versus like actually read the books.
Well, I mean, you had me analyze the books very carefully so that we could do the conversions.
Right.
So even to the fact that I hadn't played a huge amount, after that point, I found a whole bunch of things that I hadn't noticed from before.
Good. Well, because I've actually, it's like strange. We're talking about 5e, but we're doing it more from a design point of view. Because I've played some 5e, but not a ton. You have only really, I think, done it through the books and through indirect calculations.
I've not played it very much.
Right. But I can tell, like, there's a lot of things in there. Like, for instance, you get XP whether you're at the table or not. Okay, that's interesting.
I've listened carefully to some of our partners who have played thousands of hours of it when you combine them together. And I've interrogated them about things that in my small amount of playthroughs and my heavy amount of reading and analysis that happened so that I could make sure that I'm basing it off of playthrough feedback. But yeah.
But the whole thing is that you can get through. When I played it with my friends, I remember they got from like level 1 to level 5 in like 1 or 2
You
sessions.
can blaze through. The amount of XP is just lower.
Yeah, it's designed. And and people are like, you can die at level 1. You could die. Yes, of course. Anyone could die at level 1. Doesn't matter the system. You're weak. You're definitely stronger at level 1 in 5e and Pathfinder 2 and most of these
games. Much less likely to die at level 1 in 5e than it is in a lot of other editions.
Yeah. But the point is that, and I've heard this over and over again, it's like you can possibly die between levels 1 through 4, but once you're level 5, you're invulnerable and you'll kill everything in sight. And more importantly, levels 1 through 4 only last like a session or 2. And then it's like you're just a killing machine. And the few times I've played it as a player, the difference between that game and Pathfinder, like I just played a Pathfinder game, they were level 14. Both games, actually, they both ended book 4s. They both my games, they both became level 15, by the way. And both parties were like the skin of their teeth managed to get through those fights. Because, man, I was casting level 9 spells and they were freaking hitting. And they were in a world of hurt, permanently sickened, just a lot of status effects that really messed up their characters. The point is that even at level 14, they did not feel like total badasses. They felt like they were just barely getting by. And I was playing a 5e game, and I forgot we were like level 7 or 8. And I felt like a freaking superhero, and it was like everyone's really just racing to see who can kill the bad guys first. It's not a question of
some people want to play that, though.
Oh, no, I know. But the point is that it's so easy. And I believe everyone likes to play that at first. Okay. The same way is that a lot of people will play. Okay, you played World of Warcraft. You remember this. So I did.
I played World of Warcraft for my project at school.
Yeah. So you weren't there though when they came out with like Mythic rating though.
No, absolutely not. I played it. Level 60 was the max level. So for my term project, I got from level 1 to 60 with my main, which was a mage. Then I got all of the other classes up to 20, so I could write about those classes. I did a little bit of the PvP stuff, so I could write about that, some auction house stuff, so I could write about the economy. And the only actually giant raid I did, because I did not join a raiding guild because that wouldn't really work with the fact I was doing it for a project, was like Onyxia, because you can get pickup groups for Onyxia.
Right. So of all the things, I love the Onyxia, by the way. John Stats helped design that, if you ever want to talk to him about it.
There you go.
So one of the things that World of Warcraft did, and still to this day, I think is freaking genius, is they have raid difficulty. And the raids are these fights where you either have 10 or 25 people, where you, or 20 persons, where you go and you actually go through a dungeon and fight bosses. Now, if you haven't played World of Warcraft, I'm sure most of you have, the bosses require specific patterns and recognitions. You have to do things in a specific order, and everyone has their role during the fights. And what they did, which was genius, is that when they first came out with it, it was the same for everybody. The problem with that is that it ended up it was either too hard for some people or too easy for other people. And what they ended up doing is making it insanely hard for like Onyxia, so that it was always challenging and only the top people could ever get past it. What they did later is they came up with this genius idea of having 4 different types of raiding. You have like the raid finder raids, which are like so easy you can literally fall asleep and get past it and win. You have the normal raiding, which is normal. It's hard. You got to get through it. That's where you learn the fights. Then you have heroic raiding, and that's when you get all the gear from normal raiding. Then you can go to heroic. And heroic, this is the cool thing, Mark, and if you notice, the monsters have new abilities. So now you have to fight. The monsters are, okay, you thought I had 5 abilities? I got 10 abilities now, and you got to deal with 10 of them. And you're like, damn, and it's way harder. And heroic is like no joke. Heroic is like you guys really have to pay attention. Everyone has to know what they're doing. If one or two people die, it could end the raid. Then there's Mythic. Oh my god. Mythic? Mythic is at a level like, that's like the pros, man. Like if one, you have a 25 person raid, if one person messes up, it's over. It's like, wow. That's how hard Mythic is. It is insanely hard.
Sure, but making higher difficulty levels is good because then you can pick your difficulty that you want.
Yeah, Destiny does it too. Destiny copied it all from WoW. I actually have some funny stories because Destiny came out after WoW, and a couple of guys from WoW went to Destiny, and the WoW guys were ripping on Destiny 1 like to no end, but I won't get into that. That's a whole other topic of conversation. Sure.
I do like Destiny, an interesting topic, but maybe it's not for this
topic,
one. Yeah.
But not the same topic. By the way, but anyhow, that point is that the game is designed to work for your level of challenge, which is
and I want to
awesome.
I want to show how this ties in exactly to our topic because there's sort of two decisions you can make. Mm-hmm. You can make the WoW decision, which is like, I will make one that is really hard or that is a certain amount challenging so people have to play right. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, it's pretty easy to make an easier version that doesn't have all of those features or where the characters are a level higher or the monsters are a level lower. You nerf the opposition to some degree. And that is one of the choices. And that choice has a benefit because you can play whatever level you want at. That's it. When it's a tabletop, it's much easier for the GM because they can pick the one that works for their table. However, the disadvantage is that there's some players who not only do they want to win, possibly with auto attacking or some very simplistic strategy, but as people said earlier in the chat, they want to feel like they overcame things. They want to feel like they beat like the real challenge, even though they actually wanted it to be easier. They wanted to be told that it was the hardest that there was, that it was like the standard. It wasn't an easy mode. It wasn't an adjustment. And because they feel bad at that point, they don't feel like they overcame it. So they want power mode, but they also don't want to feel like they were given God mode. Like you talk about, Steven, how your favorite game at the time had a God mode cheat and you turned it on and then you never played it again after a few minutes. Nope. So they want to feel that powerful without knowing it was a God mode. And for that, having multiple difficulty levels or having something like PF2 where it's got some challenge. It's very easy to make it easier by a certain amount for your group, but groups are sometimes they might not like that, like psychologically or so-called social contract. The other choice is to have the only level of difficulty or the hardest one that's in there by the default actually just be easy. And it says encounters are deadly or difficult, but they're really not for groups that know what they're doing, or even in some cases for groups that kind of just auto attack and build their characters well. And that's sort of the direction that is more like 5e has gone, and like some other editions. A lot of editions of D&D have gone. Pathfinder 1 to some extent was like that, depending on your build, but it was also swingy in the other direction, where if you didn't build your character the right way, you could wind up auto losing things, no matter how well you played. That was sort of an issue in like the degree to which certain abilities and choices were powerful. But having that option where you can say, this is deadly. It's like, oh, wow, but we killed it easily. We're awesome. Like it has a certain psychological feel to it. It's a decision that 5e made. I think it's a strong decision for an onboarding game that is going to be most people's first experience with TTRPGs just because it's the brand. Everyone's heard that name, so they'll check it out. Well, I think that's not a bad decision for them to have made. Well,
that's the problem, is that the crux of the problem is that D&D 5th edition has become an onboarding game, because I guarantee they realized when they did all that research, because they truly designed 5th edition by committee, is that they realized no one wants to die. Everyone wants to feel good and powerful. So let's just do that.
They don't want to die, but they don't want to feel like they're on God mode. That's crucial, because it leads to a situation where that has to be the regular mode. The problem is that doing it like that actually makes it harder for with that as the baseline, it's very hard for a GM to make those other difficulties on top of that when the baseline is easy like that for a few reasons. One, just because the game design of it is hard. You have to do a lot of game design. Two, psychologically, it makes the GM seem like maybe they're being kind of adversarial or tyrannous if there's someone in the group who does want an easier time, because the GM is like turning up all of these notches, homebrewing all of this stuff, and it can lead to players who get angry. I know I've said on the stream before, my little brother was running PF1 with his group, and they were very optimized. So he would run published adventures, but he would tweak the monsters up because that's what they needed. That's actually what they wanted. But anytime something was like weird or funky or powerful, they would ask him, they'd be like, was that what was in the book? And sometimes it was, because there would just be a powerful spellcaster in the book. And he'd be like, yeah, that was what was in the book. And they'd be like, oh, okay. Even if it was just destroying them. But if he was like, no, I made some tweaks to it, then they'd be like, what have you done? So there's like a feeling that what is in the game as a baseline is sort of sacrosanct that players have, that makes it so that it's more difficult for GMs if they have to toggle it up.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is that, and I'm reading all these comments, is that the game is been designed to be easy, but that has also brought about this new thing, which you hear is that there's not enough DMs. And here's the issue, is that DMs, okay, I'm a forever DM. I'm usually okay with my players, or sorry, my monsters always dying. Okay, I'm used to it. I've done it a long time. But even me, after 40 plus years, sometimes it pisses me off, and I'm just like, damn it, you're the freaking Washington Generals to the Harlem Globetrotters. You're always going to lose. And it's just like, after a while, it gets to you. It really does. I mean, not always.
I think we could put that another way too, right? The Generals to the Globetrotters is a good analogy, because it's not about whether you lose or win with your monsters. Of course, you're going to lose,
right?
But you don't want to be wiped out so quickly that you don't even get to show the players the cool abilities the monsters had and tell the story of the monsters, so they can be like, what's that? Because that's what a lot of GMs get excited by. Like, you can get the best GMs, the ones who are not adversarial at all, can still get demoralized by the monster being killed before it could even do its special ability and find out anything that happens if that keeps happening. That's the issue. It's not that the PCs won at the end, or they played well and they won, or that something happened and it turned on their favor every time. It's more that it's not win or lose. It's more that, like, you didn't get to do the fun things that you wanted to do.
You're exactly right, because I had an ability. It was the standard old whirlwind attack. 3 action, attacks everyone within range. Doesn't raise their attack score. And I got it off. And actually, I critted half of them.
My gosh.
But then I was like, and then I literally said, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm happy. Like, that's all I was trying to do. Like,
you just wanted to show them that it had a whirlwind attack.
I got to do what I wanted to do.
You wanted to show that part of the story. And Pathfinder 2 makes it easier to do that, to give them that feeling of, oh my gosh, it did what? Yes. And then they kill it, as opposed to in 5e, where it may not have been able to do the move, potentially.
The point is by making the game easier, you then have inadvertently made it way harder to find GMs, which I guarantee they didn't think of, at least not to this point.
They probably were not going that deep into the level of realizing the difficulty that it wound up making for GMs from a design perspective. I'd argue that they knew what they were doing with players, and that they were being smart and deliberative with the choices they made towards attracting players, and it was a good decision. Even if the decision led to the issues with GMs or DMs, it was good for them because of what game they are, being Dungeons and Dragons, being the one that everybody's going to look at first. But I think you're right that they probably didn't realize just how much it was making things tough on the DM.
I think it's tough mentally because you're always losing. And the monsters in 5e, I think, are quite frankly boring, most of them. So,
well, you've had a really good point that some of that was because of the layout.
I can go into that. And my stance on this is like, there's the unsung heroes of role-playing games and video games And I've talked about this with MMO designers, because think about MMO designers, most of their time is actually spent making monsters. Okay. If you think about
that
how
makes
many
sense, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of monsters in MMOs, and that's what they say makes or breaks games. Think about how many times in I'm going to use Elden Ring just because it's still popular and pretty much everyone's played it, or even Legend of Zelda, which is coming out new this week. People talk about the monsters. You talk about Link. Link is boring. Link is a crappy character. But you talk about the moblins, and you talk about Super Mario Brothers. You talk about the
Sometimes they talk about the items in Zelda. If there's like a cool, different item that's not the one that Link always gets, it's like, oh wow, this time Link had this weird item.
Right.
But yeah, it's usually the monsters, right?
Yes, it's the monsters. Monsters are very important, and that's an issue with the layout and design. Is a lot of the monsters are boring in 5e, which I've heard over and over again. So you're a GM, you're always getting beaten, you have boring monsters to play, and the only way you can make the game fun is then by coming out and like adding new rules. And I hear this all the time, is that these 5e GMs have notebooks 3 inches thick, and they can't keep track of all their homebrewed rules, and before you know it, they burn out. So it's really, by making the game easy has made it very, very hard for the 5e GMs, which is why I like Pathfinder so much, is because I think the game is hard and fair, and I can count on one hand the number of home brew rules that we use in 4 years. Just don't. We don't need to. I do a little bit, and some of them are just because I talked to you and I know the intention of the rule, even if it wasn't in the book or it didn't fit or there was a errata mistake, like Wolf being able to trip things larger than itself. I know that's a mistake, because there's no way that trip feat, a first level Wolf, should be able to automatically trip a gargantuan dragon. That's a mistake. Things like that. So that I have in my game. But other than that, no. It's like the game, I don't have to keep track of a million things because it's in the freaking game. The game keeps track of it for me. That's the point. If you have a strong rules design, you don't need to homebrew a million things. By the way, we have a super chat.
We do, from Mirtos, mentioning, I don't mind losing, but I do mind losing if the players are having no thinking. In 5e, the players don't have to think. They don't have to do any tactics, says Mirtos. If you face normal monsters, I want the players to have to try. That's what Mirtos
I completely agree. Both of these games, and Lauren's in the chat right now because she was in one of those games.
Yeah.
They sat there and they had one fight that took these are boss. This was the big bad boss. This wasn't the boss. This was
for the 5e game that you ran with Lauren, or you mean the PF2?
PF2 game. Both these are both PF2 games. One on Sunday, one on Monday. Both the big bad boss, both the end of book 4, both level 14, and both took 2 sessions to finish because both were that hard that they really had to coordinate. And a big bad boss that takes 2 sessions is correct because they're not just sitting there. If they ran in, they would have died. They had to coordinate. They had to figure out who was doing what. They had to figure out who was standing where, who was using what powers, who was helping who. They were using teamwork. They were using aid another. They were getting flanking. They were doing everything in their power to make sure, because hitting that 40 AC is no joke at level 14. And they're like, damn it, we cannot hit this 40 without flanking and putting them, putting some things on them, making them frightened and so forth. Because suddenly, the 38 or 37 is way easier to hit than a 40. And especially, and then I don't even think any of them critted. They couldn't get up to the 50, any of them. That's, it's like that is what the fights are supposed to be. That's how you're supposed to run it.
I'm seeing a lot of people in chat talking about that they ran 5e sometimes at very high levels, and the PCs are getting power. It's hard for death or permanent consequences, and that a lot of the difficulty or work is offloaded onto the GM or the DM, I guess, and that is why it contributes to DM burnout. And I mean, you're right. It's not just in terms of whether it's easy to win or not easy to win. just some of the gameplay difficulty is offloaded into the DM, who has to actually literally become a game designer, sometimes on the fly, to handle certain aspects of the game. And you have to make calls that in some cases you'll either have to make many times and try to stay consistent, or like you make it right there and then it either sticks for the rest of your games or you're constantly changing it. Can work for certain play styles of DMs. Honestly, I'm a pretty improvisational GM, mostly for the story, but I don't like to have to improvise like the game mechanics of something that's going to come up a lot of times. I like to, if that happens and I'm like, this is something that'll come up a lot, I'll sometimes stop and just ask my players, let's work together and come up with something that we're happy with for any time you or the NPCs do this in a later session. But that probably isn't good for going with the flow. And most groups that aren't like mine that love game design and will stop and do that. For most 5e groups, they would probably want to keep going. It would ruin the momentum to stop and do that at that point. And so it really just depends. I want to spend my improvising stories, just making stuff up, and whatever the players decide, I'll roll with it. But I don't want to spend it like creating the game system while I'm playing, basically.
Yeah. It's like,
I think I saw another super chat from Mirtos as well. Mirto said, I feel like this started in 3E. I used to do it in 3E too. Power creep was a real thing then. Not in the beginning. Over time, player ability got stronger, but monsters never did. It's certainly true. If you think about where the line is between the old school ones where you could just die, that was more of like OD&D first edition and somewhat second edition AD&D as well, to a degree. It did get a little bit less in second edition just because of the design philosophy of some of the adventures was less likely to just kill you for no reason. And then third edition really moved it into, if you make this tricked out build, you might just be able to curb stomp the monsters a lot faster than they can progress. You could always do that in other editions of D&D, but at the lower levels, you were very vulnerable. And even at the higher levels, there were a lot of die rolls that could just instantly kill you no matter what you did. Whereas in 3E, there were toggles to protect yourself from a lot of those things if you were very scrupulous about it. So I think you're right, Mirtos, but that even so, that 5E represents an unprecedented level of accessibility to that, because you don't even have to build the most broken builds or find huge combinations like you did in 3E. Because people who didn't do that in 3E sometimes couldn't beat the published adventures that other people were curbing through. Like, it legitimately is true that I've seen characters in 3E, 3.5, and PF1 that were stronger than like a party of 10 other characters who were, all of them were trying to build a reasonable character. But the 10 other characters were not built very well because they took things that turned out to be traps compared to other options. And the one character was just super ridiculous and could easily beat the other 10 combined, even though they were the same level.
So I'm looking at some of these chats, and yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to rip on 5e. It's like, seems like
I actually think it's a success for it. It literally would not have been the success it was if it had the higher difficulty level and was easier to TM.
That's the problem. It's sort of like, here's the issue. By making the game very easy, by making it very approachable, by making it very power friendly for the PCs, make them feel like superheroes. The good news is it became a very popular, very approachable, very easy to play game, and a lot of newbies went to it and played it. Right?
Yeah, it's Dungeons and Dragons. Imagine if Super Mario Odyssey had a limited lives and you could just be in like the third world and it was like, no, you got to 0, your file is erased.
I know.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Like, that's Mario. It's supposed to be the approachable thing that people are trying when they're trying out.
It wasn't
like
at first. There used to be lives. Trust me, it was hard.
Oh yeah, I know. I know. That's why I used Mario as an example, because he was in Donkey Kong, the arcade game that was.
Well, even Super Mario Brothers 1.
Oh yeah, Mario Brothers 1 was pretty challenging. Yes.
I could not get past 1-4. I remember that. I was playing it, and I was playing it, and I was playing it, and then I was at my friend's house. This is how crazy. I used to bring my Nintendo to my friends' houses and play. We'd hook it up and play it. And then one day, I got past 1-4, and I made it like all the way to like, level 5 or level 6, like 6-1, and like suddenly it clicked, like, but it clicked and then boom, and I got all the way, and then can finish the game. But that's the thing, it's
that's back in the day. That's how it was. Like, right. I tried to use the analogy to Mario because it was one that we know has gone on that progression. But just imagine your file gets erased in Mario Odyssey if you go to 0 lives and you've completed like X number of things at that point. You're going to be furious at that. Like, that's what made it an ambassador game.
Not to derail this, but one of my favorite games is a game called Eternal Darkness. And Eternal Darkness, you can look it up. I don't know if anyone's played it. It's fantastic. It's one of the greatest games ever made. It was for the original N64, and throughout the game, you are going mad. And what they did by making you go insane is the game would literally change things on you while you were playing. And then at the very, very end of the game, like right before you're finishing the game, there's a save part. And whenever it would psych you out, it would go like this. It would be like, boo, the screen would like flash. And like, it's like, psych, we're psyching you out, right? And I went to go save my game. And I went to go save... Oh, sorry, it's a GameCube, not N64. Sorry, GameCube. Is that I saved my game, and then it literally said, deleting files, and it started showing the files going deleted. I'm like, no! And then just as I go to grab my GameCube, it goes, and I'm like, oh my God, you got me, freaking game. Like, you totally got me. So I'm like, to this day, I was like, that was so... risky. Yeah. Eternal Darkness. Yeah, it's GameCube. Sorry about game. Yeah, that is like I never forgot that. Yeah, there's a fake crash screen. There's a lot of things in that game.
You're never gonna forget that your entire life, Steven.
No, it's because I was like, because it shows up like save, and it's like delete, and it shows your actual files being deleted, and you're like, no, don't delete the files. But it was, of course, freaking faking you out.
I think that I've heard about that. I didn't play the Get game, but I even heard about that. But I think anyone who had that happening to them is just going to be at a point in their life where like they can't remember that much of what happened back at that age, but it's like the one thing is like, no, my files on Eternal Darkness.
That was, but the point is that strong emotions form memories, and quite frankly, I'm wondering, because if you make a game easy, Hasbro might be doing something that they don't realize, is that they might be making people... I think they're getting lucky, because a big part of playing D&D is hanging out with your friends and having fun. So that's the connections people are forming, is the social aspect, not necessarily the gaming aspect. And a lot of what people like, if you remember last year at this time, and I just keep bringing it up because it's that everyone was playing Elden Ring at the same time. It was one of the number one games on YouTube in history. It was something insane. It was something like 1 million hours a day where it's getting like, it was just endless. Like the amount of YouTubes on that, because everyone was sharing their experiences, because it was such an emotional game, because it's so hard. And I think that's something that they're missing out on, is by making the game so easy. I don't really hear people talking. I mean, I hear people talking about Strahd and stuff every so often, but I don't hear people talking about the game like we used to talk about it. Like, to this day, you still hear about people going to White Plume Mountain, or you hear about people going to Temple of Elemental Evil, or any of the famous modules, or, the Drow modules, because they're freaking hard as hell, and you usually just die. You usually wouldn't even, but you would remember how far you got, and it made a permanent impression in your brain, because it was such a hard and interesting and fun module. I couldn't tell you anything about some of the more recent D&D games I've played, because I don't freaking remember anything. It's like, because there's no challenge, and if there's no challenge and there's no fear of death, then there's no story, there's no conflict, and then you literally don't make permanent connections in your brain. And that's I think, again, all these things I don't think they thought of. Like, they thought really short term, especially 10 years ago when D&D was pretty much dying and they were just basically holding it on for life support so they can keep the rights and make money. And they're just like, yeah, we'll just put it out. You know, it's an easier game, small group. We'll have all the adventures, you know, written by third-party companies, and that's it. And then it blew up, and it got insanely popular. And now they're like, uh-oh, we didn't really design this game as well as we should have, especially for what it's turned into. So how do we make it both popular and easy and challenging and not too hard for the GM and all that freaking stuff all at the same time, and yet not make a new version, which, by the way, they officially said it's like, it's not one D&D, it's 5th edition, 5th edition, 5th edition. They just had like a new stream the other day where they like literally kept saying it's 5th edition. I was like, wow, they're going fall in on that 5th edition. They're not even saying it's like one D&D or just D&D. It's just like, I think it's just going to be, they went the other way. It's going to be 5th edition forever now. I don't think they're ever going to leave that edition at this point.
I mean, that makes sense given the backlash.
Ugh.
So there's a few super chats. Eric Wilson made a reference to something I said in DM Layer's stream about how the way that rarity works in Pathfinder 2nd edition, where just certain items and things are taught that could cause disruptions or might just be weird that you would have them running around, are tagged with uncommon or rare in Pathfinder 2, not because they're meant to be like no one can ever get them, but just so it starts a discussion with the GM. And that I likened it to the fact that, like, if your game table is a family, then the game system and the GM are kind of like the parents who are trying to make everyone have fun and have a good time and go through things. But one of them is trying to be the cool parent. And in 5e is trying to be the cool parent who's always like, yeah, you could do that. Or it just gives you everything without a framework. And if the GM wants to say, hold on, there are some things that we're going to have to discuss, or maybe this thing is not appropriate for this adventure, the GM has to completely come up with that sort of whole cloth. And then the players are like, you're so mean, GM. Whereas in Pathfinder 2nd, the system discusses rarity already and is like, there are these rarity levels, and ask your GM. And it's not so that the GM can say no. It's so that the GM can say yes a lot of the time when they want to say yes. And then they're the cool one. They're like, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to let you use this.
Dude, rarity is, I'm a big rarity fan. That is genius, because this even happened the other day. They got a unique weapon. They didn't even know what it did, and they were fighting over it. You just have the unique technology. Like, what is it? I don't want it. I'm like, dude, you don't even know what it is. Like, doesn't matter. It's cool. It's like, that adds this coolness factor, and it also makes you look like a cool person because you're handing out this great loot.
Yeah.
And the
whereas
funny thing
if you
is,
just make everything just available, even if the flavor text says this spell is known only to one ancient rune lord from thousands of years ago. In PF1, there was a spell like that. PF1 didn't have rarity. And a lot of people just tried to take it, even though the flavor text said that.
Right.
And it was busted as heck.
Right.
It was a first level spell that gave you like infinite, free crafting of things or something like that. And a bunch of other stuff as well. Anytime there was an expensive material component, you could just ignore it. So you could cast Wish. It gave you like strength damage or something that you could just remove very easily. So the point of that was that it should have had a rarity. And so when GMs were kind of like, wait, hold on, it says only this one guy knows it, you don't know it. They were like, well, it doesn't say that in the rules. You're being ridiculous, GM. Whereas in Pathfinder 2, it would say it was a unique or a rare spell, and then that conversation would be started that way.
Well,
so
now, rarity I thought was genius, because especially in my games, especially in Pathfinder First, that there were rare weapons and items, and then my guys would be like, really? Come on, can't I find it here? And I'd have to like be the bad guy. And rarity was good because it made my job as GM easier, because I'm like, hey man, It says right here it's rare. It's like you can't just find it. You're gonna have to go look for it. You can't buy it in the store. That's part of the rules. Heck, uncommon you can't find usually. It's like you got to find uncommon. That's hard to find.
Yeah, like you have to at least ask. You look around for it a little. With rare, you go on an adventure.
Yeah.
Ooh, Professor GM from Dungeon Prep is on here saying, "Amen. Without the possibility of death, the game has no meaning." Oh, you have COVID. I hope you get better.
I saw he had COVID for the second time. I was watching. I am a patron of Professor DM, and I was watching his recent stream. What he was saying, and he's been not streaming. He's been putting up a lot of videos, and he actually did do this topic. The only reason I did this topic, I actually tell you where I came up. So, I've been thinking about it a little bit, and then obviously Professor DM, and we did talk about it last week. We were talking about this topic, but I am a big fan of Rogue. Not roguelikes.
The original Rogue.
Rogue. The original Rogue, which I probably have about 10,000 hours in. I've never won. You can actually win Rogue. I've never won it. It is impossible. And you want to talk about hard? Rogue makes first edition D&D look like a freaking cakewalk. Okay, Rogue is ridiculous. It is, you have a 0.00001% chance of winning that game. You just don't win it. But I love Rogue and roguelikes. And Darkest Dungeon 2 came out. And Darkest Dungeon is one of my favorite games. Darkest Dungeon, if you never played it, first of all, the game's long. It's like 80 hours. Second of all,
I played some of it, and I didn't like it as much as some other roguelikes.
I like it a lot. I like it because when you really get it, you get it, because the pieces all fit, and you can build parties that synergize with each other. And then when you're up against, I liked it a lot.
The reason I didn't like it as much was not because of that. I did like that aspect, but I felt like that it was either the rich gets richer or poor gets poorer. If I did a good run, it would just go well, and then everything was fine. And if I did a bad run, I was screwed. Not even compared to a roguelike.
Well, remember Rogue...
Sorry, like an original roguelike where you just keep nothing.
Well, keep in
the next
mind...
run. That's one thing. But in Darkest Dungeon, not just that run went badly. My entire Darkest Dungeon may have been ruined for like 12 more runs after a single run that was really messed up.
Well, because Darkest Dungeon was
something I didn't really like about it.
Darkest Dungeon was an adventure. And that's the problem with Darkest Dungeon, is that if you're not very careful, you can mess everything up. So Darkest Dungeon 2 just came out 2 days ago, and I probably already have like 20 hours in it. I've been playing it like nonstop. It is beautiful because it is a roguelike. And it's a combination of Slay the Spire. So what happens is you build your party, and then you go on a small run that's only a few hours long, and then it ends. And then you start over again, but then you get candles, and the candles allow you to continuously upgrade everything. So you're
that's cool. Probably gets rid of the one thing I didn't like about it, and keeps all the things I did like, which was like everything else.
You always get rewarded from a game design point of view, because I know how you look at I look at it too. I was like, excellent, superb game design, because you're always moving forward, even in failure. You're always moving forward. I
always talk about failing forward. Yes. It's a huge thing for game design.
Yes.
I don't want to skip shadowy insights for too long, even though I'm not sure the answer to this question, but it is a super chat that went in between some of the other super chats. It says, do you think wizards apply what they learned in Magic to power cells, e.g. Tasha's and other books? I feel like that, said Shadowy Insights.
Well, I'm a big Magic player, not as much as I go back and forth. I haven't played in a while, but I have 30 years under my experience. Mostly Derek and I talk about Magic. Yeah, maybe. I mean, the thing is that Magic is now going into a whole new realm. Magic is going into a co-branding realm, and D&D has been doing co-branding, but with themselves. D&D has been doing co-branding with Magic, and actually, those are some of the best books. Are actually some of the D&D Magic books are actually excellent. I think they're going. Oh, they just announced today that WotC just released a free Stranger Things adventure for Dungeons and Dragons. So there you go. And I forgot about that. I believe that D&D is going to start doing more co-branding in ways they feel they can. Does that mean they're going to come out with a D&D Lord of the Rings game? No, because someone else already that came out yesterday too. By the way, that is was a Free League came out with their 5e version of Lord of the Rings, but they've been doing it like crazy for Magic because they have like Warhammer and they have Lord of the Rings and they have Transformers and they're coming out with everything and they're just going to keep doing it. The secret layers. I have a feeling that they did it. They did it with Rick and Morty. They came out with the box set. They've done it with Stranger Things. And I wouldn't be surprised you start seeing more and more of these box sets of, this is the Monopoly methodology, by the way, is that you do a co-brand. You come out with not a whole line. You come out with a single box set. You buy the box set. You open it up. You flip through it, you're like, this is awesome. You put it on your shelf and you never play it. That is what 99.9% of the people are going to do. And Hasbro is going to be thrilled. Because they don't care if you play it. All they care is you buy it. And by doing that, that is what they're going to do. And they're going to start putting out new versions of D&D that are co-branded. Or they're going to do what I really think they're going to do is when they come out with the VTT, they're going to have the microtransactions out the wazoo, and then you can even co-brand through the microtransactions. Like, oh, you want Dritz? We got Dritz. You want an animated sword? We got the animated sword. You want, flame strike on your sword that actually spits out flame. That's $199 for the flame strike. Otherwise, you get the generic flame, stuff like that. That's where they're going. And by the way, Magic the Gathering Arena just came out for Steam, I think, this week. So that is not a small thing because Steam is the biggest PC platform. So I'd be curious to see how well it does for that, by the way.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. So
I'm definitely interested in hearing that Darkest Dungeon 2 is like encapsulated runs.
It's encapsulated runs. Yeah,
are talking about it too.
It's really good. Yeah, Darkest Dungeon 2 is basically. I didn't like it at first, but then because I didn't like the beta and I played it, I was like, because I like the story, but now I kind of like it because there's a huge overarching story and there's 5 like main dungeons, and I beat the first dungeon. Now I'm on the second one, and now I'm starting to unlock some of the new characters, and I'm trying it out. It's really good.
Well, if I see it on a sale, I might pick it up. I wouldn't have before this stream because I would have thought it was the same as Darkest Dungeon 1 where you get into debt and you can't fill your characters.
You don't need to buy things on sale anymore, Mark. You don't live in Seattle anymore. You're living with your parents, for God's sake.
You're right. Now I need to save up money. I need to save money so I can put money down on the house once we find one.
All right, fine. Fair enough. I actually bought the game like a year ago, so it already was pre-bought.
Oh yeah, you were in early access, right? Because it just came out like the final came out very recently, right?
Monday. Came out Monday.
Yeah.
So that's all that happened. I just waited. Anyhow, Power Creep does sell, but not really, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Power Creep ruins. It's a short-term sale that ruins the long-term value of the game.
That's exactly what I agree with you completely. It's like giving. Power Creep to sell is like giving sugar to like a person who's hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like your group is if we're doing the analogy with the parents, right? In the game and the GM are the parents and the group are the children. The children are hungry, so you give them like 20 pixie sticks.
So,
like they're probably happy that they got the pixie sticks when they received them. They're gonna cheer. I mean, maybe they don't like pixie sticks, but they cheer. They take it all that sugar, and they get a sugar rush. But long term, it was not good for the health of the game.
No, you don't want that. You just don't want it. And if I ever see, occasionally, I haven't seen it in Pathfinder.
You're gonna get a sugar crash.
2 items that I'm not going to mention that I have seen it in from Treasure
You have
Vault.
one. Pathfinder first had a decent amount of this.
First had a ton.
I would say that to some extent
I ban a lot of things.
To some extent, the player companion line, which was not curated by the same team that made the rulebooks, kind of was like that. But it always had fun, interesting, and innovative items. Mm-hmm. But because of the fact that it didn't have the same curation, it would often lead to power creep too. Mm-hmm. But Pathfinder 2 hasn't really had it to quite the same extent. And that's partially just because, we had a really crack team of people that were all looking through things, and avoiding power creep is one of my specialties that I helped on. Logan Bonner and, and Jason Bullman and Stephen Red McFarlane did some of that stuff too. There's other things they were working on as well. And a bunch of designers and developers who would help us out if there was something happening in the adventures. So,
and I between Mark and I, if you're worried about Battlefield products, he and I banhammer things so fast. I'm beyond anti-power creep. I will smack things down if I see something, and if I don't see it, Mark does. So it's
if anything, people are always worried about, like, is third party going to have power creep? I think that, like,
might be the opposite.
I think that well, I mean, they're
not the
strong.
opposite. Well, we
build
test
it towards the top. We test more
heavily,
than just classes,
heavily.
Which even companies like Paizo and WotC rarely do much testing on things beyond classes or something as big as a class.
Yeah, we test our
so
stuff
we heavily test, and I would say that, like, our releases have fewer, like, what is this even doing than even the top companies. Some of the recent releases in, like, WotC and
Dragons
Paizo
has been out for a year, and I see no one figuring out how to. There's nothing in it that break. It's very balanced.
It's very hard to not have one or two things. I don't think that's a problem in WotC and Paizo's side, that there are one or two things that can be busted, because that's just going to happen. But somehow we've managed to avoid it by having a lot of playtesting.
No, like the what's it, the claw tail attack? I forgot what it's called.
Which one?
Is a totally fair attack.
Oh, Draconic Frenzy?
Yeah, Draconic Frenzy.
It's actually fair. It seems powerful.
It's annoying and it's powerful, but it misses. It doesn't always hit. I mean, that's the point.
It doesn't have extra accuracy.
Yeah, right. So
Lord High Summoner said, do you think Paizo has the pull or even desire to do co-branded content like Final Fantasy with job systems?
No.
So let's see what you say, Steven, then I'll give my guess.
They don't.
You say no.
I know they don't. If they do, it's co-branding with people like WizKids and video game companies.
Yeah, that's not really co-branded with Final Fantasy, though. That's just giving their branding to another partner.
Yes, they're not. I think that's licensing.
Paizo is more likely to do that. Now, they have done some co-branded stuff before, like Pathfinder Worldscape, where, like, because the comic book people who write Pathfinder comics also own the comic rights for, like, Red Sonja and John Carter of Mars. Right. There was, like, a Red Sonja class, or, like, not me. Was it? It was a prestige class or something. I don't remember what it was. It was in Pathfinder First Edition in one of the comics. So there has been some cross-branded stuff when Paizo can get that sort of, like, for free at another licensing opportunity that they were already doing. Mm-hmm. But I think that you're unlikely to see Paizo do, and maybe I'm totally wrong. Like, right? They could suddenly have a co-branded license that shows up tomorrow. I mean, I'm not there anymore. But I think you're unlikely to see them, not because Paizo can't get anybody to do it with them, which could be part of it, but more because that model is that they will take X percent, let's say 20%. That's one that I've seen bandied about. What?
It's more than that, but yeah.
But for tabletop RPGs, let's say 20%. I've seen that bandied about as being like during the time that WotC was taking a certain amount of money from third parties in the OGL. I saw some people bandying about that 20% is where people will often go for actually giving you a license, and it can go much higher if you get a really good license. It can get ridiculous, and that's off the top, not profit.
Yeah, well, that's why the Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering set is freaking expensive as hell, because they got to split that money,
not profit.
Oh, and yeah, so, they're making you pay. They're not paying. You're paying.
Yes. So the problem with that being off gross and not profit is that becomes a risky business for a company, even like Paizo, that's bigger than most tabletop RPGs, because that means you could lose money if your profit margin is less than the licensing amount. Whereas making a licensing deal where WizKids makes the minis for Paizo, that's just like WizKids makes the minis. They do everything themselves. They pay for everything themselves. They give a cut to Paizo. And that is free money. I mean, it's not free. Paizo actually has people who check to make sure the minis are working and are the correct thing for the lore. And there's hours that have to go into it, but it is relatively, for the amount of hours at Paizo that you would have to put in, or the company that is licensing out, there's not as many hours of work for getting a decent amount of money that can come in and help the company. So that's why I think you're more likely, like you said, Stephen, to see them licensing out than licensing in, because it's very risky to license in.
So I'm going to talk about the opposite. So there's the opposite side of this all, which is interesting because I'll give you again a personal experience. Is that when I was playing first edition and I played pretty much nothing but adventure paths. And this is something I think everyone should do, not play adventure paths, but you need to learn what you and your players like to play. Okay, this is what this all comes down to, is that you need to figure out what type of games you want to play, because I have figured out, and this is what happened, is that I've seen it all, played it all. I did everything from first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, and first, second edition of Pathfinder. Played them all, seen it all, played every type of game. Played tournament D&D, played PvP, played long stories, short stories, dungeon crawls. So this is what happened. We're playing first edition, and at that point, I was playing mostly adventure paths. We were doing Age of Worms, we were doing a whole bunch of things, loving it. And then Emerald Spire came out, and I was like, oh my god, Emerald Spire, that sounds great. Sounds like an awesome. Emerald Spire was a first edition Pathfinder adventure that was just an Emerald Spire, and every level of the dungeon was written by a different developer. And each level had its own story to it. And you would go from level to level to level. And we started out, and to be fair, the first levels written by Lisa Stevens is a weak level, to say the least. It's actually a very poorly written first level adventure. Nothing against her, but it's like, okay, it's first level, it's in all darkness, it's just
got even extra darkness that light doesn't go through. I've played it, and
it's super darkness. You can't even if you have lights, you can't see. No one can see.
Lisa owns the company, and some of the other. If you're comparing, it's not really fair to compare her level to some of the ones written by authors who would have written a million adventures.
I understand, but it's not a good way. And I'm not going to name names. I've had discussions about this with people at Paizo, and it used to be at Paizo, and they all agreed it was a bad way to start the adventure. Because
the thing that made it actually particularly a problem was that it came out right during the Occult Adventures playtest and was a first level adventure. And do you know how high a percentage of people in Occult Adventures playtested using that dungeon floor? Our group did. And guess what happened, Stephen? Whichever classes were being played by the person with dark vision, everyone thought was the best class.
Right, I know.
It didn't matter how strong the class was, because what actually mattered was whether you had dark vision or not, because you were playing this thing that punished light magic. That if you didn't have dark vision, you were in trouble.
It was not a good.
It's not necessarily a problem with the adventure overall, but it made it really bad for that. It was really bad
for their first impression. As this, anyhow, the point is that we tried it, and I thought this will be fun. Every level will be fun, and then we started to play it, and we got. First level, not so great. Next level, okay. Now, we went through the levels, and they're all, but they're all very uneven. There was one water level, People love water levels. They do not like water levels, especially in first edition, and then the other thing is there was no story. There's literally there's a very rough, overarching, barely there story. And then we got halfway through it, and we realized this is not fun. We were like, I'm not having any fun. All we're doing is just killing things, going from level to level, leveling up, and that's it. And we stopped, and we went, you know what? We have outgrown this. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, we would have loved this. This is not the type of thing we like. We want really cool stories with challenging fights. And I figured that out about my group, my people, myself. And that is why I play the games I like to play. Now, does that mean I'm actually going to be playing a game of DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, soon? Dungeon Crawl Classics is basically good luck. If you live, good luck. It's everyone dies. There still is also a barely there story. I think that's fine as long as that's not your main game. I'm very excited to play it, and I like DCC, and I like to play it, but only once in a while, like a palate cleanser. It's not something you're going to play every week for a year. I don't think I think you would get bored of it. And I think that's the other end of the spectrum, is that when we used to play first edition and I was a kid, I didn't care that we were all dying. I didn't care because, first of all, that's all we knew. Second of all, there was also 10,000 other role-playing games out. No one ever talks about that. But at that time, D&D was only one of hundreds, not dozens, hundreds of role-playing games that all of us were playing. We were playing everything, and that was just one of them. So you weren't that limited. So I feel like at that time we were still learning about the hobby and learning about ourselves and learning about what type of games we like to play. The thing is, I'm starting to see is, I see the other end. I think people are playing D&D. They're playing it enough. They're starting to realize, wow, this is really easy. I see a game that's literally touted as hard. And they're like, cool, I want to try that. I want to challenge. I want to see what a hard game's like. And then they buy the Kickstarter and they try it out. I don't know if they're going to like it. I don't know if they're going to like make it the regular game, but they're all going to at least have fun and they're going to be challenged. And I think that's really the most important part, is that you just need to get out of your comfort zone and see what you like. Like, do I like to play, like Darkest Dungeon all the time? Well, right now, yeah. But you know what? I also am playing right now not Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West actually is a pretty challenging game, but you can also, because it's an open world game, I can go do a low level adventure and just do a quick quest and kill some monsters and get the rewards. Or I can say, tonight I'm going to try something tough. I'm going to go after that high level dungeon and go after it and try to take it out. It's that you can sort of adjust what you feel like doing, as opposed to like Darkest Dungeon or a roguelike, where it's pretty much hard mode all the time. It's just how hard do you want it to be. And I think that's important, is that you need to learn. Maybe you like easy mode all the time. And maybe you have a DM or a GM that will do that for you. And maybe you guys just like having the opportunity to see your friends and get together and eat and drink and do whatever and play the game and kill monsters. And that's it. And that's fine too. I know a lot of people who play games and hang out and do social engagements, not because they like the engagements themselves, especially when you get older, this happens, but because you just want to hang out with your friends. And the social engagement is part of the contract to hang out with your friends. And maybe playing D&D and playing it, and after a while you might get a little bored with it, but at least you get to hang out with your friends and you're okay with that. So that's the thing I would take out of all this, is just learn the type of game that you like to play, and then try, if you can, play that type of game with your friends. There's nothing wrong with liking easy games, and there's nothing wrong with liking hard games. Professor Dungeon Master, if you're still on, he plays the hardest game I know. He's never had a PC make it past level 6.
Yeah,
That's
I remember
insane,
that. That
man.
was wild. That was great.
I'm like, I know hard games and I know, original OSR games, but damn, man, come on, make them at least get past level 6.
Look, if you count the deaths that get brought back to life with the Breath of Life spell as deaths because they were killed, I've killed triple digit numbers of characters in my Pathfinder 1 games. I've never ever been quite as intense as Professor Dungeon Master. His sound awesomely scary.
Yeah. Which is good, because it looks like him and his group like that type of playing. And I don't mind
that's
that.
why I say awesomely
once
scary.
in a while. What?
Yeah, that's why I said awesomely scary.
Oh yeah, awesomely scary. But right now, I mean, I can't tell. It's too many spoilers. But like, we're playing Agents of Edgewatch. By the way, Mark, Agents of Edgewatch. It was already up at some of the top. It was like I think one of the best adventure paths after Book 4. It's right up there with Age of Worms. It's
up there with the Age of Worms for second place after Jewel of the Indigo Isles.
Yes, or third place really. Jewel of the Indigo Isles and Age of Worms. And this, it's that good. Like, there's something that happens. I can't say it, but there's a twist. There's a twist in both books, by the way, at the end of 4. It was so good, the twist. Both parties of both books were both like, what? They were literally just stunned. They didn't even know what to say or do. And it's having them rethink the entire adventure up to that point. And I'm like, damn, that is impressive. When you can do that and make people think you've been doing one thing for 14 levels, but you've actually been doing something else and you just find out about it. Very impressive. I couldn't, even I was like, wow. Because I kind of forgot, because I read these and then I don't read ahead that far. Like, I read it, but then that's it. So even to me, it's like, it's even new to me. I was like, what just happened? I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that. I was like, oh man, oh yeah, this all, well, good luck figuring out the rest of the adventure. I was like, yeah, up there's Dungeon Craft.
There he is. He says, my games are brutal, but characters rarely die because they know I roll the dice in public and I don't pull punches. They compensate by carefully planning before attacking. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's something else. I roll all dice in public, except for secret rolls. And even half of those, I just have them roll. I don't care. They're like, aren't that supposed to be secret? I'm like, I don't care. Just roll it. I'm like, it's more fun if you roll it anyhow, in this way. If it's for something that's, the only ones I roll in secret 100% are knowledge checks. Those I roll in secret. But I end up telling them almost everything when it comes to knowledge checks. So, but the other thing that's a problem with making games too easy is they're going to get boring, man. That's the thing. I can't emphasize that enough, is that it might be fun for a few times, but, and if you've watched the show, you know what I'm going to say. It's like, all story is conflict. Like, all scripts. Like, the first thing, if you ever go to a script writing class or a storytelling class, or
I've taken script writing classes for playwriting, and it's always a negotiation or a conflict.
Always. There's always
without
conflict,
scene
there's no
has
story.
Some amount of negotiation in it, a back and forth between two people who have opposing goals in some way, and they want to make it happen. And if you don't have that,
there's no story.
Then
it's boring.
Yeah, I mean, there is a genre of overpowered protagonists who just win immediately that are stories that are sort of a parody genre, which One Punch Man is one of them in it, but there's more than that in that now that are just like, look how funny this is that we spent like an hour building up this threatening villain that is coming here, and then the moment it encounters the protagonist, it immediately dies, just to sort of parody other things for the protagonist being overpowered. But I think that is telling its own story, and even then it's created a conflict. In theory, it's just a conflict that is immediately resolved.
Yeah, I mean, a good example. So one of my favorite movies, I think I mentioned this, Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 13. Ocean's 12 is not that great. I like those movies a lot. I love those movies. And when Ocean's 8 came out, I put that as one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's not because of the cast. It has nothing to do with that. Ocean's 8 literally has them say, okay, we're going to go do a heist. We're going to steal this heist and go on this heist. They go on the heist. Everything goes perfect. And then the movie ends. And I was like, that was the worst thing I've ever. There's like no conflict. I was like, this is the story. We're going to go steal this thing. We go, we steal it. We're successful. It's over. I was like, that was it? That was it? Like, that, who wants to watch that? It's the win more button. It's the God mode. It's like, you know what? These are things people think they want, and then they play it, and then they're like, okay, now there's no conflict. Why am I playing this? Why am I doing this? If you're automatically going to win. Oh, you know what it's like? It's like that Twilight Zone episode where this guy who's a gambler, and he thinks he's in heaven because he's always winning. And then he realizes he's in hell because he can never lose, and it's horrible. So that's another thing. It's like you need that in your stories. You need that in your games too, and that's what games are, by the way. The whole point of a quote game is conflict, so that there is stakes and someone wins or loses. Even if you're playing a cooperative game and you're going up against the game, then you're going cooperatively winning or cooperatively losing, things like that. So I can tell when Mark is answering questions because then he's super quiet and I see all the chats coming in.
Hey, I was talking to you too, but you had a really good point. I wanted to let you keep going.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Well, my point is that learn the type of games that you like and play those. And just try them all out.
And you know what? Mm-hmm. Playing a game that's easy where you can kind of use the auto attack variants and win might be a game for you. And there's nothing wrong with you or anybody else who likes that game style. It is a perfectly valid game style. It's not my cup of tea because I like being the most tactical that I need to be. So whenever I'm playing like Fire Emblem, I'll turn it up to the highest difficulty unless it's one of those ones where like the first level is impossible because you have no abilities for it. But I'll try to turn it up to the highest difficulty and then build an army and use weird tactics so that I can make it through even on the highest difficulty. And that's me. But some people, you know, they want to play games even on a no fall mode on a platformer game or a mode where your character is literally invincible just to see the story. And that's fine too. In fact, it's an accessibility concern in some cases that some people just kind of literally like get nervous or have anxiety whenever the encounter has any amount of challenge to it. It actually makes them feel bad about themselves for their decision making, and they start second guessing themselves. And they legitimately are just like, hey, please, we just want this so we can just auto attack through it and it'll be a piece of cake because I'll get nervous otherwise. And that's okay. And if you have a group where everybody wants to do that, you should. But if some players want that and some players want Dark Souls, you may need to split those players up because that is probably either way, somebody's going to be miserable and it's not really fair to whoever gets to be. You can't really do a middle ground because probably everybody's going to be unhappy. Dark Souls person is going to be like, this is still too easy. And the person who gets anxious when it gets rough is like, I'm still getting anxious.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I don't remember what I was going to say. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, okay, I have a question for you, Mark.
Okay.
Mr. Game Designer.
I am a game designer. So are a lot of 5e GMs because they had to learn how to become game designers.
How would you manage to do what they are trying to do? I mean, I doubt you could answer this in one question or one show with me just popping it on you, but
okay,
you have to come up with a game that is approachable and easy in the beginning, maybe, so that it's it's the Dungeons and Dragons methodology if you get people in. But I prefer this as the video game. So video games do this. Video games, think about it, they usually start off easy and then they can progressively get harder and harder, right? They're very good at that. And then usually by the end you have very tough
They sometimes
battles.
do.
Yeah, but that's the goal.
I found actually a fair number of video games where the very, very beginning is way harder than the rest of the game. Because
that's poor design. But I'm talking about the good ones.
It's often in party-based games where it doesn't work quite as well with a small number of characters and you haven't added enough people to your group yet.
But my point is, it does basically what kind of Pathfinder does is you start off. Well, the Pathfinder starts off pretty hard, but
Pathfinder starts off deadlier in certain ways. It's very swingy, kind of because Jason Ballman really likes that style. He really likes low level to be this dangerous thing.
Yeah. Let me rephrase that. Let me say, how about this? The game starts off easy, and then it gets people into the game. So if they're playing it just for a short term, they have fun. But it continues to get more and more challenging, and without stressing out the GM, and without, I'm like, is this Pathfinder? It's not Pathfinder 2nd Edition, because Pathfinder 2nd Edition starts off pretty damn hard.
I'll tell you how to do this.
You know what I'm getting at? Like, how do you do what they were trying to do?
We're going to start with Pathfinder 2nd Edition because that already does a lot of what you wanted.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was just thinking, like, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, actually, as someone who's now up to level 15 with their characters in 2 groups, I see how it's, and it gets harder and harder, but you get
But
way
there are
more
some
skills.
things at low levels that were satisfying that different desire. That was one that, like, Jason's not the only person. Yeah, he's just well noted for just really liking
Plague Stone. By the way, that is a death trap dungeon. That thing is super hard.
I think that Jason would take that as a big compliment.
Super hard.
Some of my favorite Dark Souls, the adventures in Pathfinder 1 were Bowman adventures, where
his
like
stuff's great.
The whole party. I love some of the gimmicks in some of his
stuff's
dungeons.
Hard as hell.
But going back, let's say you want something. So do you want it to be easy to win in terms of like the difficulty is easy, or does it also have to be more approachable and that the rules seem easier to learn?
I have a perfect example.
Pathfinder first.
I know
there's two ways that 5e does this.
I have a perfect example.
Okay.
Jewel of the Indigo Isle.
Yes.
Starts off on purpose quite easy.
That just makes some of the encounters easier.
We made encounters very easy.
We knew that it can be hard when you're just starting off.
Right. And we purposely made the game ease you in. And in fact, I was even talking to people playing. It's like, oh yeah, it's been okay. We're having a lot of fun. They're kicking ass. They're taking names. I'm like, you wait. Yeah. Now that I'm like, how is it going? It's like, well, we had a player die. I'm like, see, I told you.
Ask them what happens once they get to the one where you have to fight a bunch of fights in a row.
Yeah,
it doesn't even have any severe, but you have to do them in a row. Right. That's where it starts getting a little harder.
Right, and then they started to see it, and then now they're paying it. Like once they get up to level 3 or 4, they're really starting to pay attention. I'm like, that's the point, and we designed it that way on purpose. Here's what I would say in terms of your answer. It does not make a game that is so. Let's say you were trying to make Pathfinder or a version of a game, which I will start with Pathfinder 2e, that does everything that you wanted. Mm-hmm.
So this is not necessarily a good sales tactic, but we're going to split it into basic, Pathfinder 2e basic, which is levels 1 to 3, and Pathfinder 2e advanced. I'm naming them after like the old D&D thing, and that's levels 4 through 20. Pathfinder 1 to 3 in this hypothetical world comes in a box set like a beginner box. It has everything you need for 1 to 3 and everything that exists for 1 to 3. Some of the conditions don't exist because nothing in 1 to 3 will be allowed to do like the stupefied condition or like some of these other conditions. They just won't happen until 4th level, and they won't be in the basic game. Because conditions are something that actually having more of them really makes the game much easier to play once you play the game at all. But when you haven't, you're like, oh my gosh, there's 40 conditions. I don't want to learn this game. You might bounce off of it. Each condition drastically helps make the game easier, but it makes it harder to get into. So they just don't show up. We only have a few conditions. We only have a few 1st and 2nd level spells that exist. There'll be much more starting at 3rd level spells for level 5. Also, you know what? We'll call them orders or whatever they're doing in ranks, so that they're not the same as levels, and try to get rid of repetitive word that make it harder to learn. So now in terms of difficulty, here's what we're going to do. In basic, we're going to start your character with more hit points. You're going to actually start with as many hit points as your character would have normally had in Pathfinder 2nd edition at like level 2. And then at level 2, you get half of a level. At level 3, you get half of a level, and then you've caught up. And then for the rest of the game, you go at the normal rate. Once you're out of that box.
So you start off like level 2, 2.5, 3.
Yeah, basically. For hit points. And so because hit points at 1st level are swingy, like intentionally designed that they were swingy so that you might drop down. But if we wanted to, we can just give you another 6 to 12 hit points at 1st level, and that's really going to help you not get killed as much. If that's not enough, then give all of the hit points from 3rd level at 1st level, and then you don't scale in hit points at all until you get out of basic.
Give me all the hit points. I want them all.
Just be like, yeah, sure. Yeah, your 1st level character has 30 or like 42 hit points. It'll be way too easy probably at 1st level when hit point related things come after you. But, that's what you do if that's not enough. I think that would actually be enough. Think of how small of a change that is, too. Other than that, most of the changes I put at the beginning, they're bigger changes. They're just to simplify it so it doesn't feel hard for the players to learn it. Also, I guess you could take out some of the skills and say that you're only allowed to get them starting at 4th level or something like that. That starts getting a little bit dicier, so you might not want to do that. But you could take out some of the basic actions like avert gaze and just remove all visual effects from the game until 4th level or above, and then put those basic actions in so you don't have to learn those basic actions yet. There are ways to do it, but from the difficulty level routes, like literally just giving you more hit points at 1st level is going to do a lot. It won't do everything, but it's going to do a lot. And if you just wanted to make it easier, not just in terms of hit points, you could also just bump up all of your statistics by like 1, and then find a way to take away 1 like later on when you're graduating to the higher version. If you want it to be easier in the lower levels, add a 1 to everything, and then once you get past the point where you want it to be easier, stop adding the extra 1. There's a way to design it where you do that, right? Like there's lots of ways to tinker with the progression.
So basically, you keep the game more or less the same, but then you just make the earlier levels easier. What about D&D kind of does that, but they also make it that you level up faster too. So
that is the thing that they do. You level up faster because they know that people aren't as excited in those lower levels.
Would you do that too?
I mean, you could. I think that you would just like we actually already mentioned in the Game Master Guide that you can change up how much XP to give per level, and that you might want to give have a smaller for the lower levels, then a lot for the middle if you want to, what level range you want to play more, and then go back to being faster at the end. But what if you really want to encourage that, then not just say that you can, but put in one and call it an official variant rule. Because the moment you make it an official variant rule, people will pay more attention to it, which is why I pushed to get so many variant rules in the Game Mastery Guide, and we did. But if you put a graduated experience table, and you call it graduated experience leveling or something like that, and then it's just in the variants, then many more people will look at it than if it's just part of the advice for something you can do to tweak the experience points.
Now, you're saying this, it's fascinating because I think people have been doing this in Pathfinder already without your knowledge, because that I think is the free archetype rule, which,
I mean, what do you mean without my knowledge? Like, I know that they're doing that.
No, they've been secretly doing behind your back. It's brand new. You never learned it. No,
I wrote the free archetype rules. I mean, everyone at Paizo or on the design team was really excited about putting those in. That was one we all were like, yes. Because
you don't like the free archetype rule. You told me that. What? You said you don't like the free archetype rule.
What? I never said that I don't like the free archetype rule.
Well, then you don't like it, but you prefer people. But you said you didn't want whatever. You did tell me.
My group plays with it sometimes. What I told you is that I like to run without it when I'm trying to play test things sometimes.
Oh, well, of course.
Because of the fact that it can distort whether or not you can distort how strong something seems. But I also sometimes play test with it on because enough groups use it.
Okay, so my point is that people, I think already that first level of Pathfinder is a little hard. So people did the free archetype rule, and it's become quite popular because
I don't think that follows, because the free archetype rule doesn't give you anything at first level.
But it makes you feel like you have more.
No, but it doesn't. It doesn't do anything. It literally doesn't do anything at first level. It only starts doing things at second level. So then if they did it to make first level easier, they made a bad decision.
Then maybe my point is off. Then my point was that I wonder if people are doing things like you've been saying.
I think they just want it to be cooler, and they like.
I think it's just cooler. They just want more. They like
that it gives more stuff for their character. It makes their character feel that there's more to it.
Yeah,
and they like that what I wrote in free archetype, saying that it only adjusts the power level by like less than a level in total, so you often don't have to adjust the encounters very much.
But you just said it doesn't give you anything. Now you're saying it gives you less than a level, which is it, Mark?
It gives them less than a level. It doesn't say it doesn't give them anything. It absolutely says in the free archetype rules that the power level that it does is it exists, but is usually not enough to force you to redo to rebalance your stuff. It says playing with free archetypes. Free archetype characters are a bit more versatile and powerful than normal, but usually not so much that they unbalance your game. However, due to the character's increased access to archetype feats, you should place a limit on the number, etc., etc. So that's what it says. They're a little bit stronger, but not enough that it gives you a whole level and you have to rebalance things.
So anyhow, long story short, you would keep the rest of the game the same. You would just have the lower levels. They'd get a little bit more powerful.
Oh, that's because you specifically challenged me.
That's a good way of doing it.
You said, how do you make the lower levels more accessible and easier to deal with for new players to come into it, while still making the higher levels as challenging as they are now? And so the way I would do it is by intentionally making some hacks and adjustments that only apply to the lower levels.
I think because people are going to play it, and these people might never play it again, and they just want to have try D&D and give it and this is the best of both worlds.
That's totally legitimate. In fact, honestly, like, listen, I like I said, I love Bowman style adventures. Those are some of my favorites. But I legitimately had some concerns that that people might bounce off if the beginning is too hard, and making level 1 easier was something I posited as a possibility. I know it took away like that option from first level, but I would have been okay with that if everybody else wanted to do that. Yeah, for the value of not bouncing new players when the dice go against them. I think that is a very valuable thing, and that with a different mix of designers, that's a decision that could have been made for Pathfinder 2nd Edition to make first level a little bit more handholdy and a little bit less swingy and deadly when the dice turn against you. I'm not even saying that Pathfinder 2 made the right decision. I think there was no one right decision. There were benefits and drawbacks of each one.
Okay. So if anyone has any final questions, let me know, because that's actually, I can keep talking. This is actually a pretty interesting subject.
It's a very interesting design subject about difficulty and player psychology and games, because it goes into not just, like you said at the beginning, video games too, not just tabletop RPGs, board games, like pretty much everything, even like life, like the way that people approach things in life. Like, this is a very interesting topic, and that has a lot of depth to it.
Well, I think about this because there's been a lot of discussions recently in the video game world about like tutorials and tutorial levels. And they're like, really? How many times do we have to show you how to crouch? How many, it's like, what are these, like, is it gotten to the point, like, okay, maybe 15 years ago or 10 years ago, but that's like, do we really need these tutorials anymore? Do we really need to show people how to do stuff like they used to?
You probably do, because nobody reads the directions if you include directions.
No, but that's not the point. Is that nowadays, okay, back in the Nintendo days, not everyone used the same keyboard and used the same layout for the controllers, but nowadays everyone does. Everyone more or less uses them.
Still sometimes don't. I've played games where I sometimes remap them to the standard, but
you can remap them. The point is that is where people bounce off, because they don't want to play the freaking tutorial. And what have people
That's why they sometimes are like, do you want to play the tutorial?
I was about to say that now. Now sometimes it's optional. Sometimes you also have strategy games do this a lot, is that you get to choose like 1 to 3. It's like, do you want us to show you everything? Do you just want to show you things once in a while, or do you just want it all off? Okay. And that's very common for strategy games, because strategy games, those are all the same, but you often want to at least have it in the middle, because they'll often have methodologies or you'll have things in that game that are unique to that game that you want to actually learn.
They'll tell you, like, going into the woods is usually a good decision in terms of what it does, but maybe it's dodge in this game and it's defense in another game.
So that's why, that's why you have like the medium level turned on, which is usually pretty good. You don't need like, this is how you move the mouse. I'm like, oh, I don't need to know how to move the mouse. I know how to move that. They're like, use the ASWD keys to. I'm like, yes, I know how this works. You don't need to show me. Someone did mention that there is a few games. Okay. So, not surprisingly, the best games that do this are on a different topic, but kind of, is Zelda, Metroid, and Mario, like the M and Z's. Metroid especially, Metroid will show you how to do everything just by having you drop into the game. They don't tell you anything. They just show you, and then you just do it, and then you learn. That
you
game
get
does
to a
it
point where
really
you would be
well.
hard blocked if you didn't learn this mechanic that you need to have learned.
Right, and they
And
do
then
it
you learn
really,
it
really
because
well.
otherwise you would have been hard blocked. And that is
Yeah.
a very nice way to
Zelda
handle.
does it too, by the way.
Yep.
So those
Absolutely.
but those are perfect examples. But now there's a lot of games. I think that's more of it. It's a lot of games nowadays will show you how to do it, but they're very obvious about it. They're not as cool as, Zelda and Mario and Nintendo. But again, Nintendo gets crap, but in the end, they are one of the best, if not the best, game developers in history. Like they make it look so easy because that's what the best people do. The best of something make it look easy when in reality it's insanely hard to do. They are ridiculously good at what they do. I keep bringing it up because because the new Zelda game comes out on Friday, and I am someone who I've played every Zelda game and I love all the Zelda games. I didn't actually love the last one. I didn't even finish it because the stupid weapon degradation drove me insane. I know why they did it. There's a lot of reasons why they did it, but it's it drove me nuts after a while. I couldn't finish it because I'm sick and tired of always finding new weapons. So I'm secretly hoping the new one that comes out this Friday, that they do a little bit better job with that. I keep wanting to go back to the first game and finish it, but it drove me insane. That every time I'd get a weapon, I could only use it 12, 20 times, and then it broke. And I'm like, let me use my freaking weapons. I'm sick and tired of holding on 500 weapons. Anyhow. So what do you think they're going to do with D&D 5.5, whatever I don't even know what they're calling it. It's 5th edition. I mean, they're
going to do what they've shown that they're going to do.
But they're changing a lot. They're not. It's 5th edition in name only.
Yeah, no, they're totally
they're
changing
doing a lot.
Significant amount.
Yeah,
they really are, and they're putting certain things in the baseline that weren't before. But I think we can see what they're doing because I trust that what they're showing in Unearthed Arcana is the way that they're considering going.
Oh, and by the way, everyone's talking about the Paizo blog shows the new dragon.
The Mirage Dragon. Yes, it's really cool.
The Mirage Dragon. So I guess we'll have to put in a Diabolic and Mirage Dragons in a future version of Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons, because now they have their own dragons. So what are we going to do about that? I guess we'll have to come out with more dragons one day in the near future. If you want to play a dragon. Is anyone out there playing a dragon, by the way? I know personally a lot of people play dragons. That's because they told me they're playing dragons. I'm just curious if everyone. And I would like to do a poll. Maybe we could do a poll, Mark, in the future. I want to know who's playing what.
for sort of a survey of people who are. So that would be one to just do in our newsletter or somewhere we know everybody has.
Not here. I'd be if anyone is
someone we know has our products and be which one of these are you playing? Are you running Jewel of the Indigo Isles? Are you playing these ancestries? That would be
curious
interesting
to know which one. Well, the ones that I know people have played, because in our game they play the Havoc Dragon, and that's because I kind of told Vanessa and she loved it right away. That's one of my favorites, and the Indigo Dragon. But I'd be curious to see what other people are playing. I'd imagine there's a lot of silvers out there. Oh, there you go. Michael Anderson runs 2 dragons. I'd be curious to know what people are playing. If anyone's playing a Vermilion Dragon or everyone's playing, Green Dragon or whatever. I'd be very curious. Yeah, that's people. Let's Dragon extra content. Don't worry, there'll be more dragons. Paizo luckily is forcing us to make new dragons one way or another, because they're adding a whole bunch of new ones. They did the Diabolic Dragon. That is a mouthful.
We kind of have that one in that we have the Infernal Dragon, but we'll see what the difference is. But they at least this Mirage Dragon they just showed today, that's a new dragon. And that's a new dragon that we won't be able to do until next year at the earliest, because it's not going to come out until next year from
dragon.
Paizo.
It has camouflage. It changes. It's like a
It's
chameleon.
cool.
It's kind of neat.
I like it.
That's so good. Might have to sneakily take that one. Red dragon, leaf druid, and a silver. Yep, there we go. Yeah, I knew silver is so popular. I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of silvers.
Silver is the number one most popular.
Yeah, silver is the number one most popular.
I'm looking forward to doing more dragons as much as people. If all of you keep like buying dragons, then I will keep doing dragons as long as Stephen lets me.
Well, yeah, we'll keep doing it. The thing is, right now, and we're changing that. Is that instead of doing 10 books at a time, we're probably going to start doing 1 book at a time, so that we don't get jammed up. Because like around this time last year, we were getting ready to do the Kickstarter, and look, we got let's see, Battlezoo Bestiary.
We're doing really well, given that we did a Kickstarter that was supposedly going to be like for everything this entire year of 2023. We have 1 entire book done.
Well, not the entire year, but some of the year.
Okay, but a lot of it, right? We have 1 entire book done. Year of Monsters, not only are we keeping up, but a lot of the writing has already gotten ahead. We've got, and then the final book, we've got almost all of the playtest classes are going to be into playtest already. So we're doing pretty well on that, but it is true that having so many books at the same time definitely means that one is going to be the one you do first and one's going to be the one you do last, and the one you do last is going to be a long time from when the Kickstarter started. So it makes sense to me to do 1 at a time. It's simpler, it's easier to understand the Kickstarter. I hope everybody will enjoy those.
Yeah, and then, but at the same time, it was an experiment because, I mean, put it this way, the bestiary was getting done either way. The Year of Monsters just took a lot longer than I expected, but now we have it down. It took way longer to get all those written out. So, and that we had to get done. We couldn't do it. We couldn't do Eldamon first and Year of Monsters. So we had to do Year of Monsters first because the Year of Monsters.
The ancestries, almost all of the ancestries through the end of the year. I think like I may have written all but 1, something like that. Now some of them still need conversions. They still need editing passes. They still need layout. There's a lot that needs to be done, but we've gotten that figured out at this point.
No, but I have a feeling hopefully we can start ramping up and coming out with more and more books in the near future.
We can. I think that we've started the path and we've figured out what we're doing, and we've kind of sort of like plowed the line in the field, and that will allow us to continue onward and make cool things that people like. Hopefully,
well, people love dragons. Boy, do they love dragons!
Yeah, who doesn't like dragons?
The Foundry modules. Well, actually, the Battle of the Bestiary just ended or just finished, so the Foundry module will take a little while. As I said, Indigo Isles is almost done, sort of.
That's good.
Almost.
Sort of, almost, kind of, not really.
Well, no. Well, because it takes a long time. Because I had to do with the first book, the first adventure took the longest because the first adventure has all the back matter, all the front matter, and the adventure and the styling. So that one took forever. But then after that
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but the adventures 3 and 4, those are going to go very fast because we finished everything. It's like the front matter and the back matter is done. It's just literally just adding the adventure. In fact, I'd say, let's see, the front matter, back matter. Actually, I know that's about 50%, maybe even 60% of the adventure is in the first adventure. And then it's only about 30-40% is chapters 5 through 12. Because that's literally all that's left is chapters 5 through 12. I mean, we had to do all the gazetteers, all the monsters, all the icons, all the styling, everything. So, but that'll be out. We're almost ready.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! In fact, I'm going to go back to doing it because that's what I was working on right before.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Eldamon playtest because I'm working on that. And we should have that out next week. 3 chunks.
Yes, Michael Anderson. I'm going to release it in 3 chunks. I'm going to release very soon the first adventure. Everything you'll need to run the first adventure. I'm getting a lot of people asking for it. And the thing is that the Indigo Isles is still. I hate to say this, it's actually still not done. It's done, but
Wait,
not.
it's not? I thought it was done.
Keep finding small things like small spelling errors that are on every page of the book that we have to fix. You know, things like that.
It's still done at that point. It's just that we're putting in like little postscript errata.
There's a lot of polishing. I'll leave it at that. Okay. It's done, but there is a lot, and I mean a lot of polishing. And
there's a lot even still yet to go. Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, no. It was because I got the print proofs back. And they were like, "How many changes do you have?" And I'm up to like the 12th round. And yesterday, I put in. I can see. It's about 100 pages from each book. So that's about a quarter of the book. But all of them are small. Like I literally saw, like a quote. Sorry, like one of the feats was not justified right. It was like to the left. So okay, that's a page I got to fix. Spelling mistake. 2 of them that you pointed out, those had to be fixed. But that was in both books. So that's 4 pages. So 2 spelling mistakes is 4 pages. So little things like that. Yeah. Do a remaster.
I would say that at the point where you got the printer proof back, the book is done, but it has iterations on some of the editing.
Well, it's the pre-printer. They didn't put it to press. It's the final, but we've done everything except that. In fact, as soon as I say yes, they press a button and it starts printing. So, and actually it's pretty much ready to go. I'm just waiting for the final piece. But this should be. Chris, I'm telling the poor printer, I'm like, this should be it. There's not going to be any more changes. And then I'm like, okay, there's 100 more pages of changes out of the 400-page book. But I promise this is it. And then, like, Garrett found a misspelling on the sidebar, and I'm like, ugh. I'm like, okay, I only had to change 100 pages because the sidebar was misspelled on 100 pages. So that's the worst. I've learned a lesson.
That is actually
you know what my lesson is?
What?
Don't misspell the sidebars.
That's a good lesson.
Oh my God, that's a bad one. Because and it happened twice. Chapter 4 was misspelled and chapter 8 was misspelled. And I was like, ugh, I had to change every book. What a pain in the butt. So anyhow, that's why the new version, people are like, it's going to be another PDF. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be another PDF. But anyhow. Yeah, this is the last one. The other ones we don't do nearly as much. The other ones are pretty much, we put them out and then they're pretty much done. And we'll get like 1 or 2 comments like, change this, change that. I'm like, okay, and that's it. But that's why we're never, ever, 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 ever doing an adventure path ever again. Because I've probably spent more time in this adventure path than every other project times 10 combined. So that is a
times 10 combined. Whoa, I knew it was going to be more combined, but times 10 combined. Woof.
This is all I spend. This is what I'm doing. All day yesterday I did it. Now all day today I'm doing it. I'm like, and then I'm going to do it tonight too.
I know how much you spent on all the other projects though. So multiplying that by 10 is a lot.
It's maybe not 10, but it's probably 10. I mean, because it only takes a few weeks to do. Well, the Battle Bastary doesn't take that long to lay out and do. That only takes a couple of days. The Indigo Isles took months to lay out. The proofreading for Bestiary isn't that hard. And the other ones are so much easier. The Ancestries are super easy in comparison. So long story short, don't do an adventure. There you go.
They're easier for layout.
They're hard to lay out too. They're hard for everything.
The Ancestries are easier for layout.
The Ancestries are easy.
I meant the Ancestries are easier for layout.
No, they're easy. They're easy. They're nice and easy. I don't write them, so I don't have to worry about that either. So, all right, go work on Lotus Snake, and I'm gonna.
Well, we don't have wood element yet, but yeah, I'll keep going.
Then work on. How about the? I can't read with my glasses.
Kilot.
Kitsapods. It's a boss.
I'll do chill out. We have ice, fire, lightning, and life in the playtest. So
chill on. You can do the chill on.
I'm probably actually going to do the other fire ones first for reasons of iterating the fire stuff across them, but I will do chill out too. And once those are done, which will be probably either very late tomorrow or early on Friday, I'll send them over to Steven and we'll get them to you next week. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for sticking with us and talking about difficulty in games. I think this was a really good discussion, both in the chats and with you, Steven. So, yeah. See you guys later.
All right. See you guys.